We made love. We made love.
Who you made love with?
Diddy, Bow Wow, Busta Rhymes.
Orlando Brown, the name once tied to the Disney childhood of millions. But that glory soon faded. He vanished from the screen, only to return with confessions that left all of Hollywood stunned. No longer the witty Eddie in That's So Raven. He stepped before the camera, dropping each word like a blade slashing through the glittering curtain. Diddy, Usher, Drake, Bow Wow. Names once thought untouchable suddenly dragged into the storm. Madness, or the only way to survive when daring to tell the truth. Every statement Orlando made was like a bomb, and more those jokes began to line up with reality. Remember Orlando Brown. His biggest secret will shock you. The question is, are you ready to hear it? Before the name Orlando Brown became tied to wild outbursts, he was once an irreplaceable part of the childhood of millions of viewers. In the early 2000s, That's So, Raven exploded with more than 4 million viewers per episode. A record number for Disney Channel, and Orlando, in the role of Eddie Thomas, became a familiar face around the world. Not stopping there, he also voiced The Proud Family and starred in Fillmore, which meant that in just a short span of time, Orlando was carrying 3 shows at once, learning lines, filming, and running promotional events. With his bright smile and natural charm, Orlando was called Disney's golden child, a talent predicted to shine for decades. Yet that glow quickly shattered. After That's So, Raven ended in 2007, Orlando's life veered into darkness. From 2011 to 2018, he was arrested at least 5 times on various charges: drug possession, DUI, assault, even threats. Mugshots flooded the press, and the public was stunned by the transformation of a once radiant Disney kid. The most haunting image was a video of Orlando wandering the streets barefoot, clutching a box of liquor, mumbling incoherent words. The teen idol had turned into a social media punchline. His family tried repeatedly to send him to rehab. His friends tried to pull him back, but all efforts failed. And then in that downfall, something strange happened. The very image of an insane Orlando became an invisible shield. To the public, whatever he said was nothing more than the ramblings of a madman. But if madness was the mask, then it was the perfect cover for him to speak what no one else dared to say. It was the turning point of fate from the Disney icon of a generation. Orlando Brown became an outcast, carrying both the glory he had lost and the chilling secrets that made all of Hollywood shudder. And among the many names he mentioned, one appeared again and again tied to his darkest confessions: Diddy. The darkest secret, Orlando Brown calls out: Diddy. The first time Orlando mentioned Diddy, the audience burst out laughing. He spoke in a half-conscious tone, repeating strange phrases, leading many to believe this was the behavior of a fallen star consumed by addiction. But then as pieces began to surface in court cases and testimonies from other witnesses, the picture started to change. Orlando didn't just say Diddy's name once. He claimed he had been forced into sexual encounters with several rappers arranged by this very figure. A statement that raised the question was, this, a cry for help ignored for years. The most shocking moment came in a clip where Orlando recounted his experience laughing, while saying that Diddy had passed him around to other famous rappers. Social media exploded. Reddit, Twitter, and YouTube flooded with comments, analysis, spliced videos, and cross-checks of every detail. What stood out was that none of the names pulled into suspicion stepped forward with direct denials. A chilling silence. It didn't stop there. Viral clips revived an old story about 50 Cent. In one interview, 50 Cent once revealed that Diddy had offered to take him shopping, an act he described as something you only do with women. At the time, the public treated it as a joke, a funny anecdote between 2 rappers. But when placed next to Orlando's account, it no longer seemed humorous. It became indirect evidence, a small detail suddenly fitting into a much larger puzzle. This was also when the concept of DL predators resurfaced, hidden predators in the entertainment industry, who use power to manipulate and coerce young artists. Orlando hinted that Diddy was not just one man, but part of a larger network operating in secrecy, with rituals of its own shielded by Hollywood's glamorous facade. At first, these words sounded absurd, yet they echoed alongside a wave of lawsuits erupting at the same time. In 2023, Diddy's former girlfriend Cassie filed a lawsuit accusing him of serious abuse. The case ended swiftly with a confidential settlement after just 24 hours, fueling more suspicion. By 2025, another male former employee filed a lawsuit accusing Diddy of harassment, coercion, and even orchestrating scenarios to force him into sexual acts with others. According to court records, the victim stated he once woke up in a strange room after suspecting his drink had been spiked. This detail aligned eerily with Orlando's earlier hints about his own terrifying experience. The lawsuits came like waves crashing against a wall of silence. People began revisiting Orlando's old clips, listening with a new perspective. One viewer commented, "Maybe he really is crazy. But what if that's the only way he can tell the truth?" That doubt transformed Orlando's words from harmless jokes into clues, a piece of the crowdsourced investigation into Hollywood's darkest side. Diddy, born in 1969, is not just a rapper, but an empire. With an estimated net worth of more than $800 million, he owns Bad Boy Records liquor and clothing brands, and has long been ranked among the richest figures in American music. His power and wealth are vast enough to bury scandals with lawyers and media influence. But that power made Orlando's accusations all the more frightening. Because if true, Orlando had thrust a dagger directly at one of the most powerful men in the industry. What unsettled the public most was not just the names Orlando mentioned, but the way he delivered them. He spoke like a performer, like a deranged clown making people laugh, while also sending chills down their spines. Some analysts argued that this was his shield by acting crazy. Orlando could say dangerous things without being silenced immediately. He turned himself into an unpredictable character, forcing anyone who wanted to respond to tread carefully, because by attacking him outright, they risked validating his insinuations. So, why has the public increasingly leaned toward believing there may be a kernel of truth in Orlando's story? First, the stream of lawsuits against Diddy kept appearing from Cassie to the male employee, cracking his protective wall. Second, details Orlando mentioned, like shopping with 50 Cent or bizarre parties, had been hinted at by other witnesses or stories. Third, Hollywood's history is full of crazy people who ultimately told the truth, from victims of Harvey Weinstein to artists who warned about abuse in the industry. Looking back, Orlando Brown is not just a fallen star. He is an unlikely witness, but one worth listening to. His strangeness, unpredictability, even his seemingly insane outbursts may have been what spared him from being silenced outright. Orlando is both a joke and a warning. And in a world where power covers everything, sometimes mad laughter is the only way the truth can be heard. Are Orlando's revelations just the product of a twisted imagination, or the first piece exposing a predatory network at the heart of Hollywood? The answer remains unresolved. But one thing is certain. Every time Orlando said Diddy's name, the air in the music industry grew heavier, and the public began to see Diddy and Hollywood itself in an entirely different light. When silence speaks louder, Orlando names. Orlando Brown did not stop at Diddy. In shocking interviews, he dropped some of the heaviest names in Hollywood and the American rap scene. Bow Wow, Busta Rhymes, Usher, Drake, Terrence Howard. Each name rang out like a gunshot, leaving the online world frozen. These weren't minor figures, they were A-list stars, icons admired by millions. The first time Orlando publicly mentioned Bow Wow, he smirked and made a mocking remark so sharp that viewers didn't know whether to laugh or shiver. That line quickly became a meme, spreading across Twitter and TikTok. But behind the laughter came Bow Wow's deadly silence. No rebuttal, no denial. Just a few vague posts, but no one dared to confront the accusation directly. In showbiz, silence can be more terrifying than an open fight. When Orlando named Usher a true R&B legend with over 80 million records sold worldwide, the public was once again shaken. Usher had faced personal allegations before, but never had he been tied to a dark network like the one Orlando described. And yet, in response to those claims, Usher chose absolute silence. No press conferences, no interviews, not even a single tweet. For an artist of Usher's stature, such silence was anything but normal. It felt like an even heavier curtain hiding something deeper. Then came Drake, the best-selling rapper of the decade with over 300 Billboard chart entries. Orlando claimed Drake, too, was part of the circle. A statement that punched directly at the successful Canadian superstar image Drake had built. This time, the reaction was explosive. Fans split into two camps. One mocked Orlando, saying he was making things up for attention. while the other grew cold, with the realization that Drake had no reaction. And in the world of social media, Drake's silence was dissected and analyzed until it became proof that something was being hidden. Busta Rhymes, with a career spanning more than 30 years, and 12 Grammy nominations, was also placed on Orlando's list. Once again, there was no official denial. Only old clips and stories of extravagant parties resurfaced, pieced together by online communities, as if forming a quiet dossier of accusations. Even Terrence Howard, the Oscar-nominated star of Hustle and Flow, was named. And like the others, he chose silence. Orlando once remarked, "When I say their names, you'll notice nobody dares respond, because they know I'm not lying." At first, it sounded arrogant, but after a series of silent reactions, the statement began to stir unease. What intrigued the public most was Orlando's strategy. He never told the full story from A to Z. He dropped half-jokes, half-truths using his eyes, his grin, sometimes even strange words like codes. This vagueness haunted people, because if it were all fabricated, why wasn't there fierce pushback? If Orlando were completely insane, why would such powerful figures remain silent, instead of deploying lawyers and media to strike back? Observers argue this is Orlando's crazy strategy. He plays the fool, the madman, so he can say what no one else dares. Some YouTubers even likened him to the jester, the court clown who can mock the king without losing his head. And indeed, the more people laughed, the more space Orlando had to speak, the more chances he had to plant seeds of doubt. Remember, Hollywood has seen madmen before. In 2017, many actresses were ridiculed when they accused Harvey Weinstein. They were labeled failures, fabricating stories for fame. But just a year later, the world was forced to admit they were telling the truth. That precedent makes Orlando's words, no matter how unbelievable, impossible to dismiss outright. Clips of Orlando naming Drake Usher, Bow Wow, Busta Rhymes, and Terrence Howard are now rewatched with different eyes. They are no longer just entertainment, but chilling fragments of a larger picture. One Reddit user wrote, "Hollywood is silent." And that silence is the loudest answer of all. The real question is not whether Orlando is insane. It is, why do the most powerful names in entertainment, armed with millions of dollars and elite legal teams, choose absolute silence in the face of such explosive accusations? Perhaps they know that the more they react, the more they risk exposing what cannot be controlled. In a world where fame and power are protected at all costs, silence is no longer golden. It is a crack. And somehow Orlando Brown has found a way to make that crack grow wider. Behind the panda eyes, the rituals Hollywood doesn't want you to see. Among the chilling metaphors Orlando Brown has scattered, nothing makes people shiver. Like the two words panda eyes. He doesn't say much, only occasionally drops a few half-joking, half-serious lines. But each time the phrase appears, the online community erupts. Because panda eyes is not simply dark circles. It is believed to be a code within Hollywood's shadowy circles tied to dark rituals few dare to name. Orlando once burst into cackling laughter, pointed to his own face, traced circles around his eyes, and repeated the word panda as he spoke. Viewers initially thought it was a meaningless joke. But then analysis channels on YouTube and TikTok began connecting that detail to a wave of controversial images. Children with dark rings around their eyes, fashion posters from Balenciaga that had been fiercely criticized for implying abuse. What had been dismissed as conspiracy theory suddenly found resonance in the words of a fallen Disney star. According to explanations from many insiders, panda eyes refers to injuries around the eyes believed to be the result of violent rituals within closed groups. It is a horrific detail the public struggles to accept, yet it appears repeatedly in Orlando's conversations. He never speaks directly, but his eyes, his half-smile, and the way he drops the word panda at just the right moment are enough to sow doubt. What's notable is that Orlando is not the only one to mention this detail. Earlier, the psychic Sloan Bella caused a stir when she hinted that the death of Kim Porter Diddy's former girlfriend was not accidental and was connected to rituals in the shadows. Sloan Bella also referenced panda eyes as a sign that could not be ignored. When that prophecy echoed with Orlando's halting phrases, the picture grew more terrifying. The public immediately recalled Balenciaga's 2022 scandal, when the brand released an ad campaign that sparked outraged children holding bags bearing violent imagery, and documents related to child sexual abuse cases appearing in the photo set. The incident forced Balenciaga to apologize, but for many it was an accident that exposed an underlying truth. By tying panda eyes into the story, Orlando seemed to remind viewers that what they had seen was only the tip of the iceberg. Stranger still, whenever Orlando mentioned panda eyes, he often linked it to private parties where A-list artists gathered away from the stage lights. In one interview, he pointed to the ceiling, laughed loudly, and said, "They don't want you to see what's happening up there." No one fully grasped his meaning, but right after that, he dropped the word panda. This ambiguity left audiences both bewildered and haunted. What chilled the public most was the repetition of a pattern. Orlando always chose metaphorical language instead of speaking plainly. Some believe it is his way of protecting himself. If he were to accuse directly, he could face lawsuits or even threats to his life. But by wearing the cloak of madness, he can say everything without being immediately stopped. People may mock him, but they cannot ignore him. On closer analysis, many experts argue that panda eyes is not only a metaphor for victims, but also a symbol of power. It is like an initiation sign, a reminder that whoever steps in has undergone the ritual and cannot turn back. If Orlando's implication is correct, then the artists we see on stage under the flash of cameras may have paid with unspeakably traumatic experiences. Notably, fans have pored over odd images. A few stars appearing with bruising around the eyes explained by the press as minor accidents or fatigue. But when placed next to the concept of panda eyes, those images take on a completely different meaning. It is precisely this seemingly coincidental similarity that has made the online community increasingly inclined to believe Orlando. By now, the story is no longer the joke of someone branded an addict. It has become a fragment of a larger mystery, the terrifying rituals Hollywood tries to hide. With his convulsive laughter and manic gaze, Orlando Brown seems to have thrown a shard of truth in the audience's face. Whether people want to believe it or not, it lingers there, hovering like a nightmare that won't fade. And it is the prolonged silence of the figures he named, and of an entire power structure, that has become the proof convincing the public that Orlando Brown may actually be telling the truth. Blood for fame. Orlando Brown and the Hollywood sacrifice. When Orlando Brown began speaking about sacrifice in Hollywood, the entire studio fell silent. He was no longer joking, no longer bursting into manic laughter as before. His voice turned low, broken, as if he was recounting a nightmare he still hadn't escaped. According to Orlando, Hollywood's dazzling lights do not come from talent or luck alone. They are paid for with a terrible price, the blood of loved ones. These accusations were not new. For years, countless conspiracy theories about Hollywood sacrifice artists trading family members for fame have circulated online. But when spoken by Orlando Brown, someone who once lived inside Disney and witnessed the industry from within, the words carried a different weight. In an interview with Capone, News Orlando said bluntly, "You think you're chosen for your talent? No. They want to see what you're willing to sacrifice." The interviewer was stunned, the audience even more so. Orlando didn't name anyone in that moment, but the internet immediately dredged up mysterious stories of sudden deaths around celebrities. For example, singer Jennifer Hudson lost her mother, brother, and nephew in a shocking 2008 murder just months before she reached a career breakthrough, winning both an Oscar and a Grammy. Kanye West also admitted in his song Big Brother that his mother's death, Donda West, was the price of this industry. These events were once whispered only in small circles, but when Orlando revived the word sacrifice, they became sinister pieces of a larger puzzle. Orlando also hinted that many backstage parties were really rituals in disguise. He described candlelit rooms, drinking sessions, where everything happens behind closed doors, emphasizing, "Everyone knows, but no one dares to say it." Viewers at first dismissed it as the ramblings of a drug high, but it was harder to ignore when these details matched testimonies from others. Jaguar Wright, the singer who once stirred outrage by exposing the industry's darkest secrets, also claimed to have witnessed bizarre rituals at artist gatherings. The public grew even more shaken, recalling the death of Kim Porter Diddy's longtime girlfriend and mother of his 3 children. Porter was found dead in her Los Angeles home in 2018, officially reported as pneumonia. But just shortly before, she had announced plans to write a memoir, revealing what really happens in the industry. That coincidence was impossible for the public not to connect with Orlando's claims, and Sloan Bella's warnings, who had foretold that Porter would never be allowed to tell the truth. What was most frightening was not the individual details, but the way Orlando used them to outline a system. He suggested that Hollywood operates like a massive cult, where blood is the ultimate currency. If true, then every shimmering red carpet is merely a coat of paint covering a basement the public has never seen. Some may argue Orlando is paranoid. Indeed, he had multiple arrests for drugs, a history of addiction, and unstable behavior. But as lawsuits against Diddy and revelations of Weinstein, Epstein, and Balenciaga came to light, Orlando's words no longer sounded entirely irrational. Each small detail added fuel to the fire of suspicion, already smoldering among the public. What chilled audiences most was the consistency of Orlando's story. No matter where he was interviewed, no matter whether he laughed or cried, he always returned to the same message. To stay in position, you must pay the price. And that price is not money. It's your soul. It's blood. His words rang out not just as accusations, but as warnings to anyone yearning to enter Hollywood. The truth may never be fully known, but clearly each time Orlando mentioned sacrifice, millions of viewers around the world were forced to ask behind Hollywood's blinding lights, is there a blood-stained stage where success is bought with ultimate loss? And that is what makes Orlando's confession haunting, not because he said too much, but because he said just enough to plant a seed of doubt in listeners' minds. A seed that grows each time another famous artist suddenly loses a loved one, or a star dies unexpectedly at the height of their career. Enemies in the spotlight. Orlando Brown versus Nick Cannon and Bo. Wow. If Orlando Brown's earlier revelations were like daggers aimed at an entire power structure, then when he mentioned Nick Cannon and Bo Wow, the atmosphere shifted into something personal, laced with mockery and venom. Yet even in what seemed like childish taunts, people still heard echoes of hidden truths Hollywood once buried. The first time Orlando publicly called out Nick Cannon, he didn't go into a long explanation. Instead, he blurted out a short phrase, laughed loudly, and ended with, "Nick is sugar." Just 2 words, but enough to make social media explode. To many, this was Orlando hinting that Nick Cannon, the high-profile host and father of 12 children with 6 different women, not only had a complicated love life, but also concealed shadowy relationships behind the scenes. Nick Cannon, at that moment, neither raged nor denied. Instead, he posted a long Instagram note trying to turn the situation into a joke. "Orlando is my brother and I pray for his peace." It was a clever response spinning an accusation into humor. But that very avoidance made people suspicious. If it were all false, why didn't Nick simply deny it? Why did he choose to soothe Orlando as though he had accidentally let slip an uncomfortable truth? With Bo Wow, the incident was even more shocking. Orlando once burst out laughing during a live stream and declared, "Bo Wow has," a crude phrase so vulgar that it was clipped and spread everywhere on TikTok. The video became a meme going viral at breakneck speed, forcing Bo Wow to respond publicly. Yet instead of rejecting it outright, he wrote, "Only Orlando needs help. I don't care about these antics." Once again, the public saw the same script silence mixed with pity instead of a forceful denial. Fans began asking, why do those attacked by Orlando never confront him directly? If he were just a delusional clown, why would Nick Cannon and Bo Wow artists, who never hesitated to feud publicly with peers, choose to avoid confrontation? That avoidance gave Orlando's words more weight, like an indictment that required no evidence, only the accused's uneasy response. But there was another layer. Orlando had once been a Disney child star raised in the worlds of Nickelodeon and Disney Channel, where Nick Cannon had also been a prominent figure. As for Bo Wow, both men emerged in the early 2000s when hip-hop culture and teen television strongly overlapped. By naming them, Orlando seemed not only to settle personal grudges, but also to hint at the darker underbelly of an entertainment system built around children. In another interview, Orlando said, "They all know. Nick knows. Bo knows. But nobody dares speak." He exaggerated his gestures, mimicked laughter, but those watching didn't laugh. Because every phrase, no matter how bizarre, carried the echo of a truth buried deep. Nick Cannon, who once bragged about being able to maintain a giant family with his many children, was painted by Orlando as another link in Hollywood's predatory chain. Bo. Wow, a rapper once worth an estimated $1.5 million with a career stretching from adolescence to adulthood was branded with an image so damaging he could never shake it off. To audiences, this might have been just another joke. But in the context of lawsuits piling against Diddy and other powerful figures, these jokes suddenly looked like seeds of suspicion. People remembered the times Orlando had told truths wrapped in madness, and began to ask themselves, what if this time too? His feud with Nick Cannon and Bow Wow may have stemmed from jealousy or old industry conflicts. But when placed alongside Orlando's other revelations from Diddy to Usher to Panda Eyes, it became a disturbing puzzle piece. Because if there is a kernel of truth, then even these seemingly harmless figures could be pawns in a much darker game of power. And what haunts the public most is not the crude remarks or manic laughter, it is the silence of those he named. That silence in Hollywood often carries more meaning than any defense ever could. Clones in the industry. Orlando Brown's strangest revelation. Of all his shocking revelations, perhaps none made audiences laugh in disbelief, while shuddering in unease more than Orlando Brown's talk of clones replicated versions of famous stars. It sounded like the plot of a B-grade science fiction movie. Yet the way Orlando repeated it, laced with strange details, made it difficult to dismiss outright. In one livestream, Orlando declared outright Drake. "That's not the real Drake. That's a clone." He burst out laughing, then leaned toward the camera as if daring viewers. "You think they keep stars young and always showing up on time by chance? They've got clones. Believe it." His words instantly became a hot topic. Thousands of comments mocked him, but just as many began digging up old performance videos and interviews comparing facial lines and voices searching for clone evidence. Orlando didn't stop with Drake. He hinted that many other stars also had copies of themselves appearing at events when the originals were absent. At one point, he even quipped, "Maybe I'm a clone myself," a joke or a shield, so that if challenged, he could hide behind his crazy persona. Surprisingly, the clone idea isn't new. In conspiracy lore, there have long been theories that the music industry uses stand-ins to preserve an artist's image. Paul McCartney was rumored to have really died and been replaced by a double in the 1960s. Eminem, Gucci Mane, even Britney Spears have all faced claims that they aren't the originals. By reviving the idea, Orlando only poured fuel on a decades-old undercurrent of speculation. Some suggest Orlando was speaking metaphorically. Clone may not mean biological replication, but the replacement of identity and image. Management companies can turn artists into copies of themselves. Manufactured products programmed and stripped of individuality. Under this interpretation, Orlando's words suddenly sound more plausible. Perhaps Hollywood really does create clones not through DNA, but through image control and mind shaping. What's notable is that Orlando never offered concrete evidence. He only dropped half-phrases full of insinuation. Yet it is precisely that vagueness that left the public laughing nervously while also haunted. Because if it were sheer nonsense, why have so many real-life details echoed similar suspicions before? Clones may be nothing more than a delusion. But in Orlando Brown's mouth, it became a symbol of artificiality of the masks Hollywood forces upon its stars, and of the fear that behind the red carpet smiles, we are no longer seeing the real human being at all. Orlando Brown may be seen as a madman in the eyes of many, but what he leaves behind is certainly more than mocking laughter. From Disney's spotlight to the darkest depths, each of his confessions has planted questions in the public's mind, questions that have never been answered. Is it merely the delusion of a fallen star? Or are they the dark secrets Hollywood is desperate to conceal? The answer perhaps remains unresolved. If you want to continue uncovering the shocking stories behind the glittering lights, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell, because the truth is far greater than you think, and we are only just getting started.
All data, analysis, and commentary in this video are presented based on information available at the time of production. The content is subject to change over time and should not be considered a definitive forecast.
There is still so much more to explore. Stories of resilience, legacy, and truth. Feel free to dive into some of our top recommended videos. Now, appearing on your screen.